Hi there, I'm Mireia, the host of this podcast. I'm a teacher, a mom, an entrepreneur, and passionate about connection through play and living a meaningful life. This is Rediscovering Childhood, a podcast where I share tools, stories, and conversations to support parents and educators in making more conscious, joyful, and connected choices for the children in our lives. Each episode shares a unique and powerful story, so make sure you subscribe or follow this podcast, as you never know what episode will inspire you next. Hello, we welcome Paudie from Thriving Teacher Academy. Today he is based in Limerick. He's a former teacher, primary school teacher, and he's realized something really, really important, and that is the lack of self-care for most teachers, and not because they don't want to, but because it is so hard to find the time, the strength, and the motivation to really leave everything aside and take time for yourself. So very welcome, Paudie, to the podcast.
Amazing. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you. So what made you make that shift? What happened a few years ago? Where were you in that moment emotionally and in your career? And what triggered that shift in your realization of that importance of self-care?
I think for myself, when I started teaching, I first of all I'd fallen out of routine just towards the end of my degree. But that just exacerbated once I got into the actual career itself. I just felt like I picked up every bad habit under the sun, and things went downhill for me quite quickly. But I think essentially what happened was I just fell in line doing what everybody else was doing. And in the school environment that I was in at the time, that meant coming into work super early. It meant staying behind super late. It meant coming in on weekends, and it very quickly became a case that the job had just completely taken over my life. Um, and I come from like my from a background of teachers. My mother was a primary school principal. A lot of my family are teachers. A lot of my friends were teachers, and I saw that happen for so many other people as well. Um, and for me personally, I struggled in a big way to be able to make a change, because I feel like the changes that I was trying to make in terms of trying to prioritize my health, prioritize my well-being, prioritize I suppose myself in general. There was no real support there for that. There was no one really talking about it, and it was very much a case of just come in, give everything to your job, which I think teachers are fantastic at. But what we've noticed now, having been doing this for the last 6 years and working with teachers specifically, is that more often than not will work to someone's detriment. So it happened to me personally. As I say, I've seen it happen to a lot of other people. I kind of naturally just started drifting towards working to teachers when I made my shift from teaching into the health and fitness sector. I first started kind of working on the gym floor, but because I come from a teaching background, most of the people I was working with online, they were all teachers. Those were the people I was actually getting the best results with, because I understood their background, I understood what they were struggling with. And I then started to notice that this was something that so many people were struggling with. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just people in my inner circle. It was very, very common amongst so many.
And when you talk about well-being, obviously you're not talking just about weight loss, for example. That's the first thing when someone hears, oh, a diet or going to the gym, the first thing is like, oh, I need to lose weight. But it goes beyond that. So what does it really mean for you, well-being and fitness?
I think your health and fitness, it's like your vehicle towards a successful life. And you're absolutely right in thinking that like, okay, it might, for a lot of people, it might start with weight loss, but what you're essentially doing then is bringing more attention to yourself, because I feel as teachers, we want the best for everyone, and like we want to help people. We want to give away all our best, and that's an amazing quality. And I say that to people so often on calls, is that like you're not struggling because you're doing anything wrong. You're actually an amazing person, and you're putting so much time and effort into everyone else. However, what that means is that there's just very little in your cup to be able to look after yourself. So I think well-being really comes down to realizing that if you don't make yourself the priority, nobody else will. And it's not actually selfish to want to spend a little bit of time working on yourself. It's actually one of the most selfless things you can do, because when you do that and when you flip the script and you realize that actually putting a little bit more time and effort into myself, it's actually going to enable you to show up at your very best for everyone around you, for your students, for your colleagues, for your family, and it's everyone is going to benefit for it.
Yeah. What are the differences when you look after yourself? And then in relation to role modeling as well, as teachers or parents, we need to role model what we say. It doesn't matter, if we say to our children, you need to move, you need to turn the screens off, you need to go play outside, and then we
Mm,
don't do that. So there is
mm,
a lot of learning and teaching, and I think it links with what you said about feeling guilty when you look after yourself, but being able to see what happens when you do look after yourself and the little kids are watching and they're learning
mm,
the importance of self-care for themselves as well. So would you like
mm.
to talk a bit about that ripple effect and the role modeling and how it impacts the children around you and the people around you when you feel good about yourself?
Yeah, I think there's a saying of uh kids won't do what you say, kids will follow what you do, or something to along those effects. Um and it's something that comes up so often when we speak to someone interested in joining the program. Is they say that they want to be that positive role model, and they say that they feel like almost hypocritical to be saying one thing to the kids and then acting in a different way. However, when you flip it and when you start to create a positive change within yourself, you start to wear that every single day. Like when you start to prioritize yourself that little bit more, whether it be losing a bit of weight, bringing more focus to your health, to your well-being, you start walking that little bit taller. The shoulders come back, the confidence, you wear it every single day. Um, and kids pick up on that as well. Um, and I feel it's all good and good to talk the talk, but the real proof is going to be when you actually put that into action. And when you can when you can lead from a place of authenticity and you can say to the kids, yes, we create time in ourselves every single day, every single week to, like you said there, put the screens away, put the phone down. Like I think for teachers, one of the most effective things they can do is just give themselves a little bit of alone time every day where there's no distractions, where there's no screens, where there's no emails pinging in the background, and just be alone with your thoughts for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is. Um, but when kids then see that, they'll start to mimic it as well, because kids always look up to their role models, and they'll just imitate what they see. Um, so I think that's why you have to make it a priority to be able to lead from the front, to be able to lead by example. Um, and I think that when you peel back the layers, a lot of teachers want to be able to do that, but I think that for a lot of them, and this was the exact same for myself as well, you have to first kind of come over that hurdle that it's actually not selfish to put that into yourself. It's not selfish to look after yourself first. It's not selfish to say no every now and again and prioritize yourself first and foremost. Fill your own cup up first, as they say.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what would you say to the thousands and millions of teachers and parents? Because I think a lot of these applies to parents as well, that say, I
Mm,
don't have time for this. I really don't have time for this. And we all have 24
mm,
hours in our days. We all have the same time. What would
mm.
you say to anyone saying this?
I would say, do you see that changing anytime soon? Because I've worked with teachers for 2, 3 years plus, and I've had people come into the program and tell me, oh, things are just really busy at the moment. They'll be telling me the same thing 3 years down the line. That things are really busy at the moment. Like the life of a teacher is extremely busy. And when that teacher becomes a parent, it's just like you're throwing fuel onto the fire. And I feel that if you're going to be waiting for the right time, it's like if you're constantly relying on motivation, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. The same can be said if you're waiting for the right time, or if you're waiting for things to be quieting down, because there will always be things to pull your time, pull your attention, pull your energy. And it's until you take stock and you actually say to yourself, right, this isn't going to change, and you start to actually do something differently, only then will you be able to change your results. Will you be able to change the quality of your life? Will you be able to change whatever it is that you are trying to work on? Because I say if nothing changes, nothing changes. Um, so you could be waiting until the cows come home for it to feel like you have enough time, or until you feel like there's enough, like as we said, enough time in the day to be able to look after it. But even when that does happen, all you're saying to yourself then is, I'm only going to prioritize myself when there's time to do so,
Mm.
which, as we know, is very, very seldom. So, like, again, that's another thing that you might hear from teachers too when it comes to prioritizing their health and fitness, is that, like, they're quite good to get started, but it's keeping the journey going long term is where they'll fall down, because they'll start when they feel like the time is right, but life is always going to be busy. Life is always going to throw you curveballs. And it's learning how to be able to show up for yourself, even when things feel extremely busy, even when things feel chaotic. That's what's going to enable you to be able to show up at your best and be able to keep your momentum going, to be able to keep your results going, because I lost my trail of thought there. Um, because when it comes to being able to build results,
Consistency.
it's all going to boil down to consistency. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, yeah, it's all going to come down to consistency. So, telling yourself that I'm just going to wait until the right time, or telling myself that I don't have the time, then you're only setting yourself up for disappointment. You're only holding yourself back, essentially.
Yeah. You said something there I really liked about motivation. If we
Mm,
wait for to have time, or we
mm,
wait to have motivation. And I'm still
mm,
waiting for motivation to knock at my door someday and say, "Hi, I'm here.
mm,
Motivation, nice to meet you.
mm,
Come
mm,
here, I'll keep you." That's not a thing, is it? And how do we motivate ourselves? What are the things we can do to motivate ourselves? Because I'd say it's all a mindset or things we can say. There's nothing really.
mm.
How do we do it?
I think I have a slightly different opinion on it. In, like, I think that motivation is absolutely a thing.
Okay.
However, I feel like it's never going to be consistent, and it can't be relied upon. Like, if it's there, absolutely utilize it, but also expect that it's not always going to be there. Um, so and I've been my bonnet with this as well, because when I first started teaching, that's the trap that I fell into, was relying on motivation. And what that led to for me, like, I when I first started teaching, I was someone who came from a sporty background. Like, I love training, and like I gained a rake of weight. I was out of breath going up a flight of stairs at the age of 23. I thought my best years were behind me at 23 years of age. Um, and it was relying on motivation that kept me stuck, because I get a burst of motivation maybe at the start of, or sorry, at the end of maybe the October midterm. And I'd be like, right, I'm gonna knock it on, I'm gonna turn things around between here and Christmas. And that might last for maybe a week to 10 days. And I'd hit it hard. I'd be miserable for the couple of days, because I'd try and change everything at once, and I'd be off track, and I might be seen in the gym for 3 or 4 months afterwards. And that led to a point where I actually ended up with at a point in life where I was taking photos thinking it was going to be like a before and after of a transformation. But it was just the before photos just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because I was relying on motivation. So, like, motivation, I feel, is a thing, and it's absolutely something that we've all experienced. But if you're relying on motivation, you're just going to end up like me, where I was, and just in those constant fits and starts. So what we do with our clients instead is we teach them that, yeah, motivation, fantastic when it's there, but it's not always going to be there. What can we do instead? Well, you've already shown to yourself in so many different ways that you can show up without the need of motivation. Like, who's motivated to go in and like give their absolute best teaching performance on that last week of term? But I'm sure nobody listening to this podcast is ringing up their principal and telling them, I'm not coming into school today, I'm just not motivated. But we let ourselves away with that excuse the whole time. So what we have to do instead is we have to build a set of systems or build a set of routines that we can fall back on, that will help us to show up even on the crazier times. Because as we said earlier, crazier times are always going to be there. So like something so simple for me was I was going to school and I was coming home after a super heavy day, and like every teacher here listening to this will be able to relate to, like, teaching is draining on so many different levels, like mentally, physically, emotionally. So like once you get home and you put yourself on that couch, it is an extreme mental battle to get yourself back out again. So something that really changed the game for me was just simply bringing my gym gear to school with me. So I'd go straight from school to the gym, and once I got home, then that was my time to relax. Um, but if you can set yourself up with the path of least resistance, where you're making it almost too easy for yourself to say no. For example, if it comes to going to the gym, like I read I'm sure so many people listening to this would have read James Clear's Atomic Habits, and in that he was on about building a habit of just going to the gym. And someone in the book, I think he went to the gym for like 12 weeks without doing anything at all, because he was just building that habit. But like if you could say to yourself in the days where you're coming up with all of those excuses just not to do it, that I'm just going to do the warm up. I'm just going to get in. I'm going to do the warm up, and that's going to be it. And if I still want to go home at that stage, I'll go home. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get there, you're going to do your warm up, and you're going to be like, "Do you know what? Getting here was actually the hard part." And that'll positively feed in to the next decision and the next decision and the next decision. So rather than relying on motivation, you need to set yourself up with routines. You need to set yourself up with systems to allow you to take the path of least resistance and fast track your route towards success.
Yeah, that's really, really useful. And I love that breaking down into the small habits. There's another book, actually, The Tiny Habits, where it breaks them down
Mm,
literally go to the gym to have a shower.
mm,
And
mm,
just open the door of the car and then take your
mm,
runners with you. And literally tiny, tiny habits. And then once you're
mm,
there, you are like, well, I might as well air in that shower, and do that work.
mm,
And then one thing at a time. It's like, okay, you end up running 5K and you were only
mm,
going for a shower, and then you feel great, and to recreate that feeling again and again and keep going.
Absolutely. And I think to circle back to what you said about, like, when you started asking about motivation, you're 100% right in saying that it's about the mindset side of things as well. And I think that, like, something that we see quite often in teachers is, because teachers as people, they're super determined, they're driven, they have the bar set so high for themselves that they can sometimes fall into that kind of all or nothing way of thinking, where they convince themselves, if it's not the perfect diet, if it's not the perfect training plan, if I'm not getting to the gym X amount of times per week, then there's no point trying at all. Um, and I think having that high standard and, like, always wanting the absolute best for yourself, that might absolutely serve you professionally. That'll hold you back massively in terms of your health and fitness, because as we said earlier, it's all going to come down to consistency. And like, 2 gym sessions done consistently for 6 months is going to do a hell of a lot more than you going to the gym 5 days a week for maybe 2 weeks at a time. So I think the routines, the systems is a big part, but as you said there, the mindset is going to be a crucial component of it as well. What we say inside the program is that, like, if you change your behaviors, it'll get the ball rolling. But when you change the way you think, that's what's going to allow you to actually maintain those results long term.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah. And even just make it part of your own identity.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm whatever, and I go to the
Mm,
gym. I
mm,
just keep
yeah.
saying that, and that's who I am, and that's what I do, and I will make
Mm.
time for that.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that as well, because I think that's a huge part of it, as well as is the whole identity. And I think that you can give yourself evidence on a daily basis of this new identity that you're building. Like, when we talk about the tiny habits, like, that can be brought into everything. Like, if you're if you, for example, say to yourself, I'm going to dress my bed when I get up in the morning, like every time that you do that, you're giving yourself evidence that I do follow through and do what I said I do. And like that feeds in massively into confidence as well. Like three things will always guarantee to people: you lose weight, you'll build energy, and you'll improve your confidence. Confidence to me doesn't come from how you look. Confidence comes from showing up and doing what you said you would do. And that can be built into like every single day. And when you do that consistently, the compounding effect of that over weeks, over months, over years, that's what leads to these insane results.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about children as well, because children obviously, what I read once, I don't know if you'll agree or what your thoughts are, our brain is made mainly, well, mainly for a lot of things because our brain is so powerful, but to
Mm,
move our body
mm,
because it allows us to create those connections. Like I'm moving my hands now, and it just makes our body move, and we need to move for our
mm,
own, not just self-care and well-being, but just
mm,
everything, every other skill. It's
mm,
triggered by our movement or lack of. So and children especially, their brains are growing so much every second.
mm,
It's so important. So what would you say to that, the importance of now these days with screens and the lack of movement and how that affects in school? And it kind of bounces back into the teacher as well because they have to create more engaging activities and children are bored. So it's a whole, and it's all down to lack of movement and
mm,
playfulness. So what are your thoughts on this topic and how can we help each other?
mm. I really like the idea of it all being connected to the brain. And I think that when it comes to movement, I think it's something that's underutilized by so many. Like if you talk to a teacher, if you talk to a student about like being low on energy, a lot of the times they'll turn to caffeine, they'll turn to sugar, um, and all that's going to do is give you a quick high, and then a quick low, soon followed by a quick low. Um, but we teach our teachers how to be able to have more helpful coping mechanisms in their tool belt, and I kind of break it down like a dinner menu where you have your starters, your main courses, your side orders, and your desserts. But your starters are going to be like 5 to 10 minute activities that you can do to just give yourself that kind of burst of energy when you're kind of feeling like energy is tanking. And for a lot of people, that's either going for a walk, putting on their favorite song on Spotify and having a bit of a dance. It could be doing a couple of jumping jacks. It could be just moving, getting up, doing the dishes. But it's all rooted in movement. Um, and I think that you're absolutely right in saying that we've become so stationary now, and that again feeding back into what we were saying about like role models. Kids are watching what we're doing too, and like we can't be professing to kids the importance of going out and getting fresh air and playing if you're not doing that at all yourself. Um, so I think that movement should be at the root of energy creation in general. And I think that when you do that, that's only going to have a positive effect on everything else as well. Like we were saying, it's all to do with the brain. Like that, keeping yourself active is one of the best things that you can do for your overall well-being. Um, and I think it's something that a lot of people could do with bringing more attention to.
Mm. What's the link? What do you think is the link between movement and exercise and having fun and playfulness? Because I
Mm,
think kids, they'll move climbing trees or playing tag or games like that, but we stop doing that.
mm,
So what's the link that would get us will help as well with that bit of motivation? Because some people, I love going to the gym, but I know for some other people it's torture. So it's just
mm.
finding the type of activity that suits your interest as well and movement that makes you feel good. So what do you think is the link between moving and exercising and having and how do we link that and learn from the children and the way they do it a little bit more?
I like what you said there about learning from the children because the children should be looking up to us for to learn. But there's definitely hints from that
Work
from
both
there as
ways
well.
sometimes, yeah.
Absolutely. Um, and I like what you said about the motivation side of it as well because I think that you have to, for something to be consistent, for you to be able to do it long term, you have to be able to enjoy it. And I think if you can be looking forward to your bit of movement, your bit of exercise in the day, you're going to be far more likely to follow through and do it, and you'll feel so much better as a byproduct for it. Um, However, I'm sure if we were to ask the listeners here and now, what do they do, or what do they actually enjoy in terms of movement? What do they do for fun? I'm pausing dramatically now. I'm sure a lot of them would struggle to be able to answer that. Um, so I think that kids love being out and playing, and they love to be out and to be active because they enjoy what they're doing. But a lot of us then, when it comes to wanting to make better choices, focus on our health a little bit more, we do things that we feel we should be doing. Whereas if you can, like for example, when we talk about weight loss, people think that they have to go to the gym, or they have to do the HIIT classes, or they have to do whatever, and they hate them. So of course it's only ever going to be fleeting. It's only ever going to be a short-term thing. Whereas if you could focus on, right, what do I enjoy? What's something that I'm actually going to look forward to here? What's something that I'm going to still enjoy doing 6 months from now? And zoom out a little bit, and rather than thinking about what's the most important, or the most effective, think about what's going to be the most enjoyable, what's going to bring me the most fulfillment, what am I actually going to find fun here? That's going to serve you so much better than finding a local class and jumping around for 60 minutes like a lunatic, and hating every minute of it. I think the fun piece has to be rooted in if you're serious about that being a long-term thing.
Yeah. If you had a magic wand and you could
Mm.
do a little bit of magic
Mm.
and change something in schools, so schools
Mm.
would support teachers in finding that time and motivation to look after themselves better, what would that be? What do you think schools could do to support teachers in this area?
I think it needs to be spoken about a lot more. Um, I know that well-being is like it's a hot topic in schools at the moment, but there's clearly a disconnect. Um, I think that there needs to be better education out there in terms of what you can do to look after yourself better. Um, like I know that there's CPDs, and there's specific courses, but there's still a huge gap in terms of teachers being able to prioritize their own well-being. Um, so if I had a magic wand, I think I'd like to bring more fun back into what people are putting their attention into. For using that example that we said a while ago, in terms of like going to the gym or trying high intensity classes because they think that that's going to be the best way to produce a result. Instead, focusing on, right, what am I actually going to enjoy here? And I think if I had a magic wand, now it's landing with me a little bit more, I get people to stop looking at their health and fitness as a phase, and thinking about what's the most I can achieve between here and summer break, or what's the most I can achieve in term one, and instead start looking at it as a lifestyle, because your health and fitness, it's rented. Like if you're not working on it on a consistent basis, it's not going to stick around. Like you're not going to get fit and get well and get healthy because you did one gym session or because you did one home workout. It's going to come from you doing that over a consistent amount of time. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, if I had a magic wand, I would get the focus to stop looking at it as a phase, and start looking at health and well-being as a lifestyle
Yeah.
instead.
Yeah, and all the things you're saying now, it really makes it really simple because it could be just like having accountability buddy that you can ring and go for walks twice a week or 3 times a week. And you can take the kids if you're a parent as well. You could take the kids with you and be that role model and involve everybody.
Mm,
And if that's what's easy and suitable for your lifestyle, but it's just
mm,
adding that consistently,
mm,
that's when it makes a difference.
mm. Absolutely. I really like the idea of the accountability buddy. And I think it's about like finding what will suit you here and now. Like if going to the gym 3 times a week is completely out of the question for you, rather than focusing in on what you can't do, like bring more awareness to what you can do.
Mm.
Like we heard from so many teachers who are also parents who turn into like part-time taxis in the evening because they have 2 or 3 kids, multiple trainings throughout the week. So many of these parents are they're spending the hour of the training in their car on their phone, when they could be getting out and getting moving. So rather than focusing on what you can't do, focus on what you can do instead.
How does your business and your program help teachers in relation to that consistency? So what do you do to support that? Because that's kind of the one thing that's the most complicated is to be consistent. So I suppose that's your
Mm,
main job, is just to be there, that support.
mm. Yeah, that's a great question as well. I think the most important thing that we do for teachers is meet them where they're at. And I think because we come from the teaching background ourselves, it gives us the upper hand in being able to understand just exactly what these teachers are going through. And I think that it's important to meet them where they're at. It's important to give a teacher a realistic expectation that, okay, there will be parts of the year where you're going to be able to give this 80% of your attention. But it's also okay that, for example, summer's coming up, that during the summer, you might only be able to give this 20% of your attention. That's fine. But what we need to eliminate is it going from 80% to zero or from 100% to zero, and instead find a way to be able to keep this consistently throughout the year. We've actually got what we call a gear system inside the program where every teacher will set their own standard for gears 1 to 5 so that at different parts of the year they'll be able to say, okay, for me to be able to prioritize myself here, I'm going to cruise away here in gear 3 for these next couple of weeks because there's exams, there's corrections, there's parent teacher meetings, whatever it might be. And then when we get into the summer break, I'm going to crank it up into gear 4. Or another person might say, I'm going to actually pull back into gear 2 because my summertime is my time to relax, unwind, and it's about having a realistic expectation about what that's going to look like. Um, Compared to if I'm not in gear 5, there's no point doing it at all. Because that's what leads to those kind of inconsistent fits and starts that we spoke about earlier. So I think that it's about meeting a teacher where they're at here and now, and then giving them a realistic expectation of what's required to be able to keep that show on the road year round, rather than for the next 10 weeks or for the next 12 weeks.
Yeah, I think that flexibility really takes a lot of pressure off everybody's table, that it doesn't have to be the same for everybody. It doesn't have to be the same every month of the year. And it makes it
Mm,
so realistic and easy with that accountability to achieve.
mm.
So that's really good. Have you come across any fun stories or interesting stories you'd like to share of, anyone that has come up with ideas of how to get exercise during busy periods or
You're putting me on the spot here now. I'm like, how do I do it? How can I share something without sharing
yeah, or
personal
any ideas
details?
of like how to make movement and exercise and fitness exciting, or that someone might have come up with, or
One thing that's actually come up quite recently from a client who suggested it, and a lot of other clients have actually jumped on board with it now as well, is when we spoke like about this not just being about weight loss and it about being so much more, and like talking about teacher well-being. One thing that a couple of our teachers have been trialing recently is adult coloring and adult coloring books, because what we've noticed is that like teachers, because I feel like a teacher's brain is like you've got 101 tabs open at all times of the day. And unless you're finding things and finding the time and actually planning that time into your week to actually sit down and just give your brain a chance to just switch off, it's not going to happen. And it's going to mean that you're just in fight or flight mode all of the time. And it's just going to be go, 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 go. And that's what very quickly leads to burnout. We had a quick conversation about that before we hit record. But I feel like the adult colouring is something that someone suggested in one of our group calls, and so many more have jumped on board with it since and have found it extremely beneficial. So it might be the funniest of stories, but it was something that kind of caught me by surprise, that like something so simple. And that's something that has been reaffirmed to me time and time again through this journey of my own, is that like the simple things go so far. And if you can just do the simple things well, you will drastically improve the quality of your life as a byproduct of it. So I just thought it was funny to think of like a lot
So
of
would that help
teachers.
you kind of pause and relax your mind, and then you're in that space connecting with your own self, and then you can take action?
100%,
Brilliant.
100%.
Yeah, because I started
Um,
doing jigsaws recently, and when I
mm,
was saying earlier, I call it the Hunger Games, because
mm.
doing jigsaws, there's no cooking, there's no eating, it's just jigsaw, and the kids, Mommy, I'm hungry.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
gives them that
yeah,
independence as well, and they can see me how, I use those techniques again back to role modeling what you do to help your brain relax, and it's so I do understand the coloring as well can be such a mindful activity to help you relax.
absolutely. And I love that your kids are able to see you do that then as well, because it's also important to, okay, rather than relaying it as the Hunger Games and saying you have to let your children starve a little bit.
Extreme variation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, but we get what you mean as well. But like it is also important to like be able to have that bit of a boundary and be like, no, I am actually having this time to myself here. Um, because people can like, I think that teachers will think that if you don't bend over backwards to suit everyone, like teachers, and I'm the exact same myself. I'm not accusing, but like we're all people pleasers. We all love helping everyone else. But we have to understand as well that people are able to look after themselves. They don't need us bending over backwards to suit them either. So like having the courage and having the courage, I suppose is the right word there, to be able to set that boundary and be like, no, I need this time to myself here. I need to give myself the opportunity to find this thing that I've heard it been referred to before as finding your flow, where like you can do an activity where you lose track of time, and because you're enjoying it and you're really caught up in it, and that's so important for your well-being as well. Because if you don't find those pockets, if you don't have the jigsaw, if you don't have the added coloring, I have another client who loves doing Sudoku.
Sudokus.
Yeah. If you don't give yourself the opportunity to do them, you're just going to fill it with work. And again, that's just going to feed into the burnout, and that's going to feed into the lack of energy, and that's going to feed into the lack of motivation, and that's going to feed into the unwanted weight, into all these unhelpful coping mechanisms. So it's like it's making it the priority. Making you the priority is so important.
Yeah, that all makes so much sense. Do you do a bit of nutrition as well?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We
Yeah,
have
and
our
what's with that? What would you say would be a healthy lifestyle in relation to nutrition, as in how many times, like all the snacking, for example?
I feel everything is going to be context dependent, and I feel that for example, every client that comes into us, we don't give them like meal plans or anything like that at all, because everyone has their own eating history, their own eating preferences. We teach them how to make their diet suit themselves. So I don't believe there's any like hard and fast rule, or there's any black and white in terms of how many meals a day or whatever else. But what I do feel is extremely important for everyone is that they're taking the time to plan their meals in advance, because so many teachers, number one, skip breakfast, two, will work through the day and don't give themselves a chance to have lunch or to have break. Three, will get home ravenous, and because they're starving, they then have to, and they're fatigued, and they have those 101 tabs open all the way through the day. They're primed to make poor decisions. So if you can instead, like, it doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't mean that you have to spend 7 hours meal prepping on a Sunday. But if you can sit down for 10 minutes and be like, right, these are going to be my lunches, these are going to be my dinners, which means I need to go to the shop at this day. to make sure that I have those meals there. If you don't do that, you're priming yourself for disappointment. Like again, teachers, fantastic planners that have a plan for their classes, that have a plan for their students. Make sure you have a plan to fuel yourself, because if you don't put fuel in your car, what do you expect is going to happen? But then we're left surprised when we don't take the time to plan the fuel for ourselves. So I think that the planning side of things is going to be what's going to be most important there.
Yeah, it's such an important investment, and you said it so well. It does make a lot of sense, and you can't have one, then the scale goes down this way, and then you keep balancing, and then nothing works, and then you stop, and that's your consistency gone there. So thank you for that. To anybody listening now, if there's one thing they could do to start right now to make a change for tomorrow, but as you said, there is no perfect time, and the best time is now to get started. What could that be? That one change, other than obviously calling you and booking your program.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, rather than focusing on what you can't do, start focusing on what you can, and focus on what's the one thing that you can do right now to start moving the needle in the right direction. Because you could spend all day coming up with reasons not to do it. That's only going to keep you stuck. So rather than thinking of all the things that you can't do, what's the one thing that you can, and what's the one thing you can do to start moving the needle in the right direction?
That's such a positive mindset, and it just sets you up for success.
There's always a way once you're willing to find it.
Thank you so much. That was really inspiring. I'm gonna go for a jog now, I think. It feels so empowered. So we did it.
Amazing.
Thanks so much, and
I appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak. I always love having these conversations as well, and I feel like the more that we speak about things like this, the more people will actually be able to take it on board. So I just want to thank you for giving the opportunity to be able to have that chat as well. And for anyone that would like to find out any bit more about myself, be able to find us on Instagram at the Thriving Teachers Academy. So have a look on there, or if you'd like to send us an email, Paudie, PAUDIE .thrivingteacheracademy@yahoo.com.
And together we will make this world a better place.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Don't forget to like, share, and follow so you'll never miss out on upcoming episodes. See you next time!